Hi, my name is Mark. I'm 43 years old. I live in Arlington, Texas. I'm gay, and I want to say that it does get better. I've wanted to do one of these videos since the day Dan Savage first posted his video saying that it gets better. The reason that I put it off is because I feel like for my video to be effective, I have to talk about my past. And while the people who are closest to me know my story, it's not something that I just share openly. But I was watching Rosie O'Donnell today and I realized that there are still kids out there are still young people out there who are gay who think they can't handle it, who think they can't live life this way. And I just want to say, hang in there. Just hold on. Because it really does get better. I'm 43 years old. I've known I was gay since I was probably 10 years old, although at that age I didn't realize there was a word for what I was. It wasn't until I got into high school that I knew that gay meant that I liked boys. But um, I lived a life full of lies, denying who I was, leading a secret life, so to speak, until I was about 35 years old. And I didn't actually get to come out and be an openly gay man until I was probably 39 or 40 years old. And I know that seems like a long time to have to live with pain and misery. But after you hear my story and you see where I am now, you'll see that it really does get better, all and that all those years of pain and hurt, they're worth it to get to where you're going to be and to have what you're going to have. Because I promise you, the day will come when you're going to wake up, you're going to have what you want, and you're going to be happy. I told you that I've known I was gay since I was 10 years old, or that I knew I was different since I was 10 years old. That's about the time that the boys started talking about girls, and that's about the same time I realized I didn't care to hear the boys talking about the girls. I'd rather just hear the boys talk about themselves. When I got into junior high and I had to take PE and I saw other boys naked, that's when it really hit me that, wait a minute, this is not right. See, I grew up in a Baptist home, a very strict Baptist home, very religious. By the time I reached high school, there was no doubt I was gay. I had a boyfriend, even though at the time I didn't realize we were boyfriends. We were just best friends who did things. Um, but I knew I was gay, and I knew that being gay was wrong and I was going to hell because I was gay. And so I had to hide it. I had to deny it. I had to bury that inside of me. I made fun of gay people. I looked down my nose. I badmouthed them. There were a couple of boys in school who were, I want to say, obvious. But back in the 80s, nobody was openly gay in high school. And I made fun of them just like everybody else did. And that hurt me to do so. I hated myself for it because I knew I was being a hypocrite. When I graduated high school, I went into the Navy, which looking back was probably not the best idea, being gay, having to hide it, and being stuck on a ship with 300 other guys. But while I was in the Navy, I was very self-destructive. I hated myself for who I was. I knew I was going to hell because of it. I was miserable and I wanted to die. And I did try more than once to kill myself back then. Thankfully, I didn't succeed. Um, it got to be too much for me to bear, and I went to one of the people in charge and told them that I was bisexual. Back then, we didn't have don't ask, don't tell. Back then, if it was found out you were gay, or even if you had one homosexual experience, you couldn't serve. Well, I got my discharge, and when I got out, I decided that was it. There was no more of this gay thing for me. I was trying to block it all from my mind. I wanted to be good, I wanted to be right, and I wanted to go to heaven. So I ended up becoming, well, I ended up deciding I was going to follow in the family footsteps and become a Baptist preacher. I moved to Salt Lake City and started going to Bible college. And while I was there, I met a girl, a really sweet girl. And we ended up married, and I had 3 beautiful kids. We were married almost 17 years before I came out to her. But in that time, I got so much more involved in the church, and the deeper I got into church, the more I hated myself, and I couldn't understand how, if I was serving God the way He told me to, and I was doing it with my heart because I loved God. I was doing the things I was instructed to do because I loved God. I couldn't understand how I could be so miserable when I was doing the right thing. I ended up becoming an associate pastor, and I had a lot of duties in the church. I would go down to the church in the middle of the night and bow at the altar on my knees in front of the cross, and I would sob, and I would beg God to take the evil. I would beg God to take this horrible thing out of me and make me who He wanted to be. I would spend hours on my knees there. I fasted and I prayed. I wrote it down on paper and tore it up and I burned it. I just can't tell you how often I took it to God, begging Him to please take this away from me. I couldn't live like this. I begged God to take my life because I would rather be dead and with Him than to be alive and live with this demon inside of me. Because I was like this, because I was struggling the way I was, it affected the kind of father and the kind of husband that I should have been. It hurt so bad, and I couldn't talk to anybody about it. And the deeper I got into church, and the more I tried to deny who I was, the more I hated myself. And make no mistake about it, I am gay. It is who I am. People say being gay doesn't define you, but you know what? It does. You are gay as much as you are white or brown or black. You are gay as much as you are Native American or Asian American or anything like that. No, it's not a race, but it's something that's born deep inside of you. And we're taught that God doesn't make mistakes, and I firmly believe that. Anyway, on September 11th, 2001, you know what happened. The planes, the World Trade Center, and all that. Keep in mind, I'd been going to Bible college for years. I'd been studying to be a pastor. I knew what the Bible said, or our interpretation of the Bible. And I heard a preacher say how bad he hurt knowing that all of those firemen who died in the World Trade Center, how they all died and went to hell because nobody had ever reached them, how nobody had ever explained the gospel to them, how they didn't, because they didn't know and they weren't saved, they went to hell. And that stopped me. And I thought, wait, that's not right. That's not what the Bible says. To me, the Bible says, and I know this, it says you're supposed to love one another. The Bible says to love the Lord thy God with all your heart. This is the first and only commandment that Jesus ever gave. And it says there's no greater love that a man has than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. They say, so to love the Lord thy God with all your heart is the greatest love. And to give your life for a friend is the greatest love. So to me, that's the same thing. So all of those firemen who went into that building knowing what was going to happen, they went in there to save people and they ended up dying. And I knew those men could not have gone to hell because they did what God wanted them to do. They had to be in heaven. And that just stopped me and made me realize everything I'd been taught all my life was wrong. That I was being taught these things by people who loved me, people who would die for me, and why would they lie to me? And it was like a revelation. My parents, my family believed the things they were teaching me. They believed that being gay was wrong. They believed that I would go to hell if I was gay. But they believed it. I didn't believe it. And it was like something inside of me opened up, and I knew the truth, and I was able to accept the fact that God loved me because God made me who I am. Anyway, I ended up coming out. I told my wife I was gay, and I was going to stay with her because we did get married for better or worse until death do we part, and I wanted to be true to my vows. But she is such a wonderful person. And we ended up divorced, and she told me it was because she wanted me to be happy, and she knew that I could never be happy being in a marriage like that when what my heart wanted was to be with another man. So there I was, 40 years old, divorced, miles away from my kids. I thought I had nothing. But I was out. I felt so free, but I still wasn't happy. And then an online friend became a real life friend, and she introduced me to one of her friends, and we clicked, and we started dating. And now we've been together for 3 years. We're in a domestic partnership. We probably would be married right now if it was legal in Texas, but we don't want to have to run to another state to get married when our own state won't recognize it, so we're waiting for Texas to recognize gay marriages. But after all of that, after a lifetime of misery and pain and suffering and wanting to die and thinking nobody would understand, I'm here and I'm happy. I'm going to get married someday. We're looking at rings. But the most important thing that I want to share right now is the fact that when I came out, I knew that my parents were going to turn on me. I knew my parents were going to hate me. They would turn their back on me and not love me anymore. And it was something that I had to accept. It was something that I had to be ready for. And I couldn't tell them in person, so I told them in an email. And they both replied to me and told me they still loved me. They didn't accept my choice of lifestyle, but they still loved me. And over the last 3 years, my mother and I have grown close again. My dad and I are good. My mom told me when I came out that if I ever had a friend, he would never be welcome in her house. But guess what? This Christmas, my partner and I are taking my kids, and we're spending Christmas with my parents at their house. My mother has become very welcoming and accepting of my partner. She's happy for me. And she told me that she wished that I could have told her when I was 15 years old, what I was going through. And then, as hard as it would have been then, she would have gratefully accepted it in order to have saved me all the suffering I went through later in life. So, I guess what I'm saying is, it does get better. Yes, you're going to be afraid you're going to lose people, and you might. But the way I feel is that true love is unconditional. And if somebody loves you, they're going to love you whether they're gay, whether you're gay or straight. And if you come out to them and they turn on you, then they never really loved you unconditionally to start with. And for every person that you do lose, there are two more out here waiting to embrace you and love you for who you are. So please, it does get better. Just hang in there. Even if it takes 40 years, it's worth it. I would not trade any moment in my past if it meant that I would be in a different spot today, because I can't imagine being any happier or any more content than where I am and who I'm with. And it took me 40 years to get there, but it was worth it. So please, if you're out there and you're struggling and you're hurting and you think nobody understands and you don't know how you're going to do it, believe me, it does get better. Just hang on.